don't think he was religious, but he did tell me God made me this way to play rugby. I'm not romantic about it. I think it's getting easier the further away from the game you get. So I can look back on the near misses and you can spend hours staring into the abyss, but move on. And yes, it's professional sport and it's cutthroat, but there is another side to this. My body essentially was a business. You've got to give credit to some of the decision makers. They've taken the leap and there's always going to be pushback. I think the most important team now is the one that's in the house. Well, I think what we've learned, or I've learned, we could have more of an influence on the game now in a suit rather than a tracksuit.
It's a great pleasure today for me to introduce our Jonathan X guest, okay? I have to read these out actually. So, most capped rugby player in history, played on 4 Lions tours, won 3 Grand Slams for Wales. Alun Wyn Jones, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Good, how are you, Alun?
Yeah, not too bad.
Good.
Just nervous to see how nice you're going to be now.
Yeah, I was like, oh, you don't need to be nervous.
I've seen you on the paddle court.
Yeah, I know. You turn a bit quicker on the field, you do the paddle court, let me tell you.
Same like you do,
I do, right? So at the moment, what's it like, not being on the pitch? Is it still raw?
I think so. I think I like I'm not romantic about it. I think it's getting easier the further away from the game you get. I probably still got my boots on somewhere. I don't think if you play a rugby at the highest level for long enough, you don't take them off in a way. And I think if you've played, you understand that.
Do you think also, right, because you played, for so long and played whenever you could for club, country and Lion, that you think, I tell you what, I couldn't have done anymore. And you called time on your own career?
No, I think, I love playing rugby.
Yeah.
I tried football, realised I was too big, too slow. Ended up in the goals, and I was fortunate enough to find rugby. I think I had a schoolboy coach that was, I don't think he was religious, but he did tell me God made me this way to play rugby. But I love the game, and I always wanted to play, and every opportunity I had, I took it. And I think, I'd like to think how much you wouldn't, Anne's, my wife, might disagree. But I think if you're fortunate enough to play for long enough and keep a little bit of that, like, boyhood perception of things, you play for a bit longer. I was fortunate to have that.
I think you played enough, to be honest. Well, don't worry about it.
I do it all again, but go twice as hard.
Yeah, mate.
If you have a chance.
You maybe wouldn't last then.
Well, no, I probably wouldn't.
There we are. So, right, early career, right? So, where did it all begin? Where did you pick the first rugby ball up?
Well, it's probably from my grandfather, my dad, rugby family.
Like your dad, now you're good friends with your dad.
Yeah, long time ago now.
Good boy, I know.
10 years next year, but so there was a rugby family. Dad played for the F Troop in Swansea, as they affectionately called it. And I started in Mumbles. Unfortunately, the team folded when I was about 10. But having played at Swansea schoolboys, knew a lot of mine. Boys, so
that's a big culture.
Well, I went across the city and I was welcomed. And I've said this story a few times. And even now, I'm still known as Mrs. Jones History's son.
Yeah,
okay.
So respect.
Well, yeah, I think it was sort of the respect for her more than me. But again, it happened to work out that I had the frame for rugby from a young age.
Did you then? Did you try the sports? You said you played soccer and played in goals. Obviously, in goals your position, being your size.
Yeah, well, I started off a striker and ended up back there. That's how good I was.
Yeah, that's not a good start, not a good finish.
I tried loads of stuff. Lots of ball sports, racket sports, and I think it's even a bit of sailing because we live by the coast.
Yeah.
So I did that for a while until I got too heavy. So real mix of sports, and I'm grateful to my parents for the opportunities. Is what we do with the kids now, and give
try everything.
Exactly.
Try everything.
I think had it just been rugby, look back, I probably wouldn't have. If you did too much too soon on one thing.
I tore my cruciates when I was 18. I think it kind of reignited me for the love of rugby, because I've been out for 18 months. So because you get to a stage you think, I've had enough. So do you have any other hobbies outside sport?
Well, I tried a few musical instruments and stuff. Probably should have learned Welsh sooner, but I think the way I ended up really with sport, because I think I went to ball at 11, and then I got my first schoolboy cap at 16, and I thought, there's something here. So probably from 16 then, I was all in on rugby. I still did the odd bits and bobs of other things, like surfing and that, but I think rugby was the thing that I could really see, well, not see a future in, but really enjoyed.
But also then, you know, at that age, I think, even though you didn't have the decision to make, you've got to make a decision that time, right, this is it now. I'm all in with it. Very rare to get, you know, Cambridge Blue in cricket and in rugby these days. It's all into one sport.
Well, I think as well, because you know, family teachers on my mum's side, so education was always important as well. So that was and that's the thing, when you've got a lot of time in school and whatever, and I probably only had time for one thing to be fully immersed in. And I was just, you know, fortunate that a few people probably saw my potential and, you know, sort of got on the pathway from there.
Dave, who's the biggest influence on your career, early doors?
Probably, you know, a lot of people say probably the parents. You know, they facilitated everything. Probably particularly mum, because she was working in Bottom Island, and they'd take me up twice a week for training on I think it was Tuesday and Thursdays, and then wherever you'd be ferried. And yeah, it's the same story for most people who achieve in whatever they do. So I'm fortunate that they were able and happy to do that.
Because this question now, right, is it'd be interesting, because I know your dad played for Swansea, didn't he? I know he did. So who are your sporting idols, Welsh players that you looked up to when you were growing up?
Welsh players?
Anyone really?
Do you know what? I think Jinx is probably up there, and I think also now, as I've had to, you know, worked there for such a long time.
Great boy.
You know, lucky enough to, you know, after a few, call him Uncle Neil at times, as a few others have. But even, you know, probably Scott Gibbs, Mark Taylor, because they played for Swansea back in the day.
Any forwards, Swansea forwards? Softies, weren't they?
Well, I don't know. I think when you're younger, you just...
Still watching Heath, see you?
Well, I know. Come on now. I think when you're younger, though, you gravitate towards the ball the most, or
You
know, it's a little bit like Premiership football in a way, but they were probably the standouts. So obviously, Gibbsy probably because of the game I went to the old man in '99 in Wembley, and that try, and just, you know.
But if Jinx didn't kick that, right, you never show the try yet.
That's my name, your first man. But yeah, like, and that's the thing, it's probably more so now in sport that you focus on the biggest moments, but it was probably the same back then.
You know, you could have one club or one region player, because at the end of your career you went out to play for Toulon. So what did, you know, playing for the Ospreys, give you a sense of pride, you know, playing for your local region? Yeah,
I think my city, my region, obviously, you know, I played for Swansea in the Prem. Again, I was probably accelerated a little bit, so I didn't play as much as I could have. But I think I was very fortunate for that stepping stone. You know, 16s, 18s, 19s, 21s, doing the Prem. Was actually my second year. I was in Llandovery College. I went up there on what was a Jordan's Rugby Trust scholarship, which is long gone now. So I was doing that and coming back training twice a week. And then when I left college, I was training, not necessarily full time with the Ospreys, but I was, you know, there for most of the days, and then I'd go do that in the evenings. And I think almost like when I was, you know, said about 16, having a foundation and seeing a clear opportunity, because obviously we went to regional rugby in 03. So I always ask myself this question: would it have been easier to play pro then because there are more teams, or harder because there are less? And you never know.
No idea.
But it's a question I do ask myself. You know, did things happen at the right time for me as well?
Did you do something parallel to rugby? Did you?
Yeah. Well, again, because education was a mainstay in the family on my mum's side. From teachers, I did my, you know, I was on a scholarship in Swansea University. Started my law degree there. Did my first year.
Dad was a lawyer, wasn't he?
Yeah. Well, this is just an expensive piece of paper now. So yeah, and I went part time then, and second, third, and fourth year. So it took me 4 years to do 2 years really, and then madly I done my first Lions tour in 09 and my finals in 2010. So it was a busy time, but I probably, you know, wish I had more distractions throughout my career, because I played some of my greatest rugby then at a early age because of the distraction. You know, but yeah, I did that because, you know, I think I'd I had about 75 caps and my 9 then rest was like, you're still enjoying, and don't forget the load create.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's going okay.
I think you'd have gone nuts if you hadn't had something else to do.
Yeah, well, I think as well.
Because you're intense anyway, right?
Well,
in the game.
depends.
But everybody talks to say, I think you're all right. I think you calmed down a bit.
Well, no. But I think as well, though, I didn't know at that time whether, I was going to kick on or off.
Yeah.
I was going to get. So I'm still.
So I was like me boat that I
still in limbo in a way, even though I've been a few years in the professional game.
Here we are. Right, going back to the Ospreys, right? You're part of a very successful Ospreys team. What was it about that team?
I think we were fortunate. We had some backers with ambition that got players in to supplement, the Welsh internationals we had. Because I think, obviously, with the inception of regional rugby and the amount we had and the amount we had from the Swansea area and a few others from across Wales, we were really fortunate. So to be up close and personal training with guys like that early on, and the ambition then to bring, some of the names that we had in through there.
But you say you had Marshall, Philo Tier,
Marty Holler, Tommy Bow,
Jerry Collins was there. And then you had the backs, didn't you? Well, Justin Marshall came obviously for a bit, but the backs were homegrown when they most from the region.
Well, myself and Hooky were the first handful that came through.
Yeah.
So, like the actual academy that was there. And like I said, we were doing the academy stuff, but then you're training with and immersing those guys at like 18, 19. So it was probably something I've said a few times. You probably learn more from being around players like that than you do from coaches, because they talk to you more. You have to talk to them, and you're from 90% of the time you're up close and personal.
Because there were some big names like in that, even the Welsh names, Burns and Hooks, and Gavin was there, of course.
Shane, Alun Jones, Duncan.
So all of them. How did the coaches manage the different characters and personalities? Even like the word you could have Mike Phillips and Justin Marshall in the same position.
Yeah. That's a question for them. It's a great question. I think they never were too constrictive. I think what I've learned probably through the captaincy stuff is everybody's different.
Yeah.
So they did their best, but I think even back then, regional rugby was so young, so it was new to everyone.
Yeah.
There were some interesting times off the field and all that sort of stuff, but I think on the whole, there's a lot of professionals in that team. You don't get to play test level rugby if you haven't got some of that.
I think coaching. I don't know. I had coaches. I'm thinking. I don't think I've ever had a coach that I think knew more about rugby than me, and also being ignorant. It's in a position I played, you had to know a bit of everything, right? But do you think then I think managing the players is maybe as important, if not more important, than coaching.
Well, I think you look at the game now, it's changed a bit, isn't it?
Yeah.
23-man game, and you look at what England have started to do and unload the bench. South Africa have done it, sort of changed the game really. They just dropped the bomb score off the bench. So I think with the sort of mentality around the game change, it would have probably been easier now in a way than it would have been back then.
Yeah.
But we came close. Probably not close enough with the squad we had.
Yeah.
You could go into the finer detail of moments and all that sort of stuff. But
that's the thing, compared to your national career. Do you think Ospreys should have been more successful? The calibre of players?
Well, they had a league title in 05, so where did he go in? I think it was 03, 05.
Yeah.
And then we had a few more, so we done successful in the domestic league, or was it the Rabo, and then the Celtic league, or the Celtic league, the Rabo. Europe is the one that I think, that's where the ambition needs to be. And
I think you were good enough to win that.
Well, we got close to San Sebastian against Barretts, but we didn't, so you can't really lament that sort of stuff, because it's like you look back on the near misses and you could spend hours staring into the abyss, but move on. And I did it with Wales as well. I think some of the biggest losses I learned the most from, but it's just life as well.
You look back at that time as well, you had a vibrant league, really strong region, with overseas players coming in. what do you feel about the current state of it? You know, even the kind of even the overseas players, you know, we haven't got the calibre anymore. And that's purely down to finances.
Yeah, well, I think it's it's easy to put everything down to money. I think with I've been a bit candid on some of the stuff I've said. I think it's inevitable that there's going to be a change. The shape, the how, the what, and what for is important. I just, having been through something similar in 2019 with my merger, just before the Scotland game with the Grand Slam, after
strikes.
I just feel for the players, but not. Needless to say, and I don't necessarily agree with everything, or moreover, probably how some of it's been done, but you've got to give credit to some of the decision makers. They've taken the leap, and there's always going to be pushback. And again, I've said it, the fact that we're 2 years down the line and we've got to wait another 18 months, 2 years is probably the most frustrating thing for me, because players have got families and careers that they try and lap up, which yes, is professional sport and it's cutthroat, but there is another side to this. That I think if we want to develop the game, we've got to develop that. So
I think there's a lot of things being said, but I think there's more questions then need to be answered. But the one good thing I think is that we understand the importance of putting money into development, coaches, age groups, because that's the future for Welsh rugby, I'm afraid.
Yeah, and that's my frustrating thing. I've said it before again. 2 years down the line, there's going to be some professional entities, however the shape of those look like at the end of this. But yeah, I would have liked to see more prevalence position put on the pathway, because we said it earlier. I did the scholarship professional rugby sort of thing that Hartbury and Exeter have been doing for a long time, 20 years ago. And I don't necessarily think I was one of the first, but it was around for other sports as well. So it's not necessarily revolutionary in the fact that that's how I came through. And even with the schoolboy stuff, I'll be honest, I'm not completely up to speed on all that, but a lot of my district and schoolboy coaches were teachers, so there was almost indirect link or eyes on people playing the game through those means. I don't know how prevalent that is now, so I'm not going to be.
I think is I don't think anyone on the outside could say what's really going to happen.
No,
as you said, I think there's a lot of smoke and mirrors at the minute.
I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily be that candid. But I think you said it. I think there needs to be answers. Not everyone's going to be happy with the answers. And I just think that the danger of wasting time just sort of pushes the issues along. Hopefully, I'll be really pleased to be completely wrong, and this is for the betterment of everything and everyone.
But like I said, we'll have to wait and see what happens. But the next decision they make will be very, very important for the future of Welsh rugby. So, right, moving on to your Welsh career now. Right, 158 caps for Wales. That's kind of ridiculous. Amount of but it is.
It's not a numbers game, though, is it?
No, it's not. But
no hiding cup.
But I think it's remarkable that you've actually played, that amount of international games. That's not counting your clubs and your regions and your school games and all that. I just think to have that amount of internationals, because it's such a ferocious game. It's changed. People ask me, has the game changed? I don't think it's changed kind of, on the simple facts. You go forward, you tackle, you run the ball, right? But the whole preparation, the nutrition, the strength and conditioning, the preparation of video analysis and all that, I think that it's just way beyond that.
This is the thing, I think people forget, all of that goes into it, and there's a lot harder jobs, more important jobs. But there'll be a lot of guys that put a jersey on that aren't playing 95% a lot of the time, because if you play enough, your recovery, depending on where it is, your recovery starts the next day and you go for the next one. But I was fortunate, I enjoyed all that.
We'll go back to that on recovery and how you look after yourself. What was do you remember your first cap?
2006 Patagonia. If you want to feel really old, it's 20 years next year.
Not feel old anyway, so 20 years.
Yeah.
So where do you keep your cap?
somewhere safe. I think my problem is I put stuff so safe I can't find it again.
No, well,
So I think I got all the jerseys in chronological order, and caps I think are somewhere very safe.
I think I put my first jersey. I found my cap in a kit bag last week in the state up in the loft somewhere. So,
I still haven't framed any.
No, I
Never
am.
framed
I am very.
I like rugby clubs, but I didn't want to live in one. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I'm the same. I can, and I also think I know what I've done. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I think I'll get to a point maybe, but not yet.
Where does your first cap rank in your career?
I think I always wanted two. I said this a few days ago actually to someone, because you know it was a dream, and I did not make a mistake. So if you've got two, you're off the mark.
Yeah.
But I think it's huge. I think I was went out there. I think I was 20 odd, maybe a bit older, and I thought I was going to hold bags. And it was that long ago. We found out the team on an OHP. So there might be some people who don't know what an OHP is.
Oh,
Just and I go, well, you're right in the acetate, chuck it on, and then it gets chucked up on the wall. like being double science when it comes out, But so it was that long ago. But yeah, it was, and people ask me about games and where it ranks, but I think anything that starts something that goes on for quite a while is pretty important.
Yeah, I think I didn't have any Welsh caps at any schoolboy level or youth level, so my first cap for Wales is like the best thing. And you go on and win things, but...
Well, I actually remember we played, I think I was injured actually, I had a leg issue, didn't play, and I think we played France in Rodney Parade, and you were actually commentating on it. And I remember you saying distinctly there's a big difference between a schoolboy cap and a first cap for the men's team.
Yeah.
And there is. And that doesn't take anything away from anyone. But
No.
I think until you get it, you realise the difference.
Yeah. I didn't really, because that's it for me, because I never won it, I never put a Welsh badge on. So to do it the first time, it's just really special. I've been in television now, when I nearly 30 years now, right? So yeah, that's it. That's it. The best ones are the silent notes. But I've commented on pretty bad experiences in the Welsh jersey, but also, so nice for the 3 Grand Slams, which is really special. Is there one game or one tournament that stands out as your favourite?
I think the Six Nations is great. Obviously, World Cups. You've got to get your timing right.
Yeah.
Be injured and have a good run. You've got to be part of a team that's in form. But I think we're very fortunate to have a Six Nations that comes around every year. To be a part of that, the travel, the fans, the whole thing, and the history. I think as a sport we're really lucky to have that.
Yeah.
And unless you've had a Grand Slam and the pressure that builds, the anticipation. It's huge, and sometimes I think we potentially take it for granted because we know it's coming every year.
So which one was your favourite, and was it game or tournament, do you think?
Game or tournament? This is the thing, it's quite hard because I played quite a bit. They sort of change depending on how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
But I think 2019 was up there, not necessarily because I was skipped for that game, but I think just because the chat they had about the jeopardy of the regions.
Yeah.
That came out like for us to, we weren't great against Scotland, but to get that win away, and then go to the Millennium Millennium as it was, with the roof open.
Yeah.
It was special. But then I always ask myself this question: is it easier to do something once or the second or third time?
Yeah. I don't know the answer.
This is the thing. It's like I've been fortunate to be in a great group. For those for a relatively long period of time, which I'll never take it away for that or acknowledge that.
What about, do you love facing any particular nation or the Southern Hemisphere sides like different to play against?
I think the occasion. I think England's always going to be up there, not because it's England, but because they're always there or thereabouts. I think you look where France have got to of late. And the Sans Our Nations in particular, because you find out against the best teams.
Yeah.
That's when you find out how good you are or not.
Yeah.
You never beat New Zealand with Wales.
Totally. No, but no, man, I don't think there's anyone living.
But
Well,
you know, so yeah, I think any of the top teams you play against are the ones you want to, as a pro sportsman, you want to play at the top level against the best teams and find out. You know, particularly because some of the players in that All Black team we played through in the middle of their career were some of the greatest players. You know.
well, I say, 'cause it was weird because I think when the game went professional, you know, second rows really came to the fore. World class second rows. You played in an era, but you know, you could pick a world side, right? World side with second rows. And if you pick 10 people to pick 2 second rows, everyone could be different.
Yeah, well, but I think
Quality.
I was fortunate enough to play against like Alun Williams, Chris Jack, Backy's both, Victor Macfield, Paul O'Connor, Donick O'Connor, and I think Paulie in particular is probably one of the first. You know, you look at front 5 second rows. I think Paul O'Connor's one of the first hybrid back 5.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
You know, we sort of opened the game up. I'm sure there were other that were doing it, but of my memory, you know, in that Munster team, the league play, particularly moving on to Ireland.
Yeah. Great players.
Yeah.
Great players. What about, right, so you know, you were captain for a long, long time. Did you enjoy being a captain?
I think I did it in my region and probably did it younger than I thought I would.
Yeah.
And I probably cut my teeth and changed as I got older. But I think I enjoyed pulling the jersey on, but I think to have that mantle is something special. It's not the be-all and end-all.
No.
And it's something I never really, you know, you don't pull on a jersey and say, right, I'm going to be captain. But I think it gives you a bit of a boost and something you're doing right in your career. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think everyone that I've spoken to about, you know, you in general, about you would have led from the front, right? You know, I think as a captain, you led from the front. What would you have found hardest about leading, being captain, leading the team?
It was probably the change I didn't realise I needed. Probably I was pulling a Chinese shop early on. As you get a bit older, you realise you have your own kids. And this sounds like really airy-fairy and you know, too caring, but you've got blokes that have got issues. They're someone's son, someone's brother, someone's uncle, whatever. And I think when that sort of opens your eyes a bit, you become probably a little bit better to deal with those things. I think, you know, there's other ways of caring and trying to tackle someone or, you know, whatever on the field. But I think that's really important, particularly, you know, the state of things at the minute, to acknowledge that. Would I like to be able to change more and enforce more? Probably. But, you know, you can only be listened to by so many at times.
Because people ask me this question, like, what kind of leader were you? I'm not sure how I can answer that, because I was captain of Wales Rugby League, Rugby Union Grip, and captain of Widnes. I'd only played like 3 years of Rugby League, right? So I was being asked to captain people who played Rugby League all their lives. I didn't know how to answer. I think I was just an instinctive leader. I kind of knew what to do at the right times, maybe, and understand people.
I think there's a few things you can. What's the word? Align with driving. If you think you're a good driver, you're not a good driver. Do you know what I mean?
I think I'm a good driver.
Well, there you go. So do you know what I mean? It's one of those things. Like if you think you've got all the answers, you're probably off to the
exactly.
And, exactly. Yeah, even with Wales, I think as I did that role, I think it was a few years. I was very fortunate for the senior guys around me as well. I think we'd have moments where it was like, oh, that's a decision I don't need to make that. So that makes leading a lot easier as well. Yeah. When you get there, you're a better performer.
And you're always learning, isn't it?
Exactly. I think that's important.
Did you get? Because you always seem assured and prepped very well before matches. But did you get nervous before matches?
Yeah, I think that's when practice was good.
Because I did, right?
Yeah.
And another way, saw Neil Jenkins. He was like being sick before games, like and he looks most cool player on the pitch when he's kicking goals.
Yeah, I think sometimes how that manifests again can be different ways leading up to a game or before a game. But I think, always be someone that overly cavalier or maverick. You need people that are confident. Yeah. But I think that they can be dangerous, and I think there's the finite difference between those things and players is so small. Yeah. But I think my nerves are probably were or I shelved them by my prep.
It's weird, that is, because I don't know. I was always nervous. Even if I played five-side football,
Well,
my village.
I would have been. I think I would have been worried whether that was my time. If I wasn't nervous, then I shouldn't have.
Yeah, that's what I tell my kids.
And well, that's the thing. There's some people. No, I never am. I'm like, well, I get the boxer mentality and all that.
Yeah, well,
I think that's important.
Yeah, it is.
But it's
controlling that rather than that controlling you is important. Yeah. But also, if you don't have the butterflies, sometimes I say, is it important to you? And I think if you get the butterflies, you feel as if it's important to you.
That was the that was more not a fear about the game, but that was more the question that you ask yourself. And it was probably a good thing for me. It kept me going.
What 20 years career? What was your secret for looking after? I've been to your house, right? The gym is like nothing I've ever seen before.
No, it's not. Don't talk it up.
Then you got your
small but perfect.
The cold water and the sauna.
Yeah.
So it's a remarkable way of looking after yourself. That's massive sacrifice, isn't it?
A lot of that stuff that I've collected throughout the career. So if I got injured, I was like, I need something now. And I was always like, well, my body essentially was a business, so you're going to invest in yourself.
If you're not playing,
exactly. Well, not just that. If you're not investing in yourself, you're not playing, let alone anything else. I think a lot of the stuff I've got now was probably forced, like a lot of people, off the back of COVID as well, because we training. So I was like, well,
you're right.
That was an opportune time to do it, and I needed it. But a lot of stuff I still do now when I can get the time. But yeah, I was like, I collected a lot of stuff, and I remember a few boys I offered that for, and then you leave it in the changing room, and then you're having a go now, you? Little things like that.
That's quite good, isn't it? But also, the cryo chambers, it's, and the ice baths, because you did remarkably recover quickly from injuries.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I was in. If I got injured, sometimes it was an opportunity to fix something else. But also, I sort of took it on as a challenge in the fact of, if this is my return to play date, if I don't get that, or a little bit before, then I've sort of missed the opportunity. And sometimes when you haven't got, because it's how you get injured. It's all about getting fixed and getting back on the field. So you don't do a lot of rugby until you're ready to do your skill stuff. So a lot of the time, the training could be harder, but you do a lot less rugby stuff.
Yeah. But you do a lot of your own as well. I suppose in our time we did it all on our own. You had people.
Yeah. But then you'd be in on a different schedule or whatever. But I'd always top up most off days, and a top up wouldn't be necessarily physical stuff. It could be recovery stuff as well.
Yeah. What like everyone says, you've got to be selfish to be a professional sportsman. Did you find that your sacrifices like social events, food?
I think that's the thing. There's a lot of people sacrificing a lot more to do more important jobs. But I think I was just very fortunate. My aunt was a sporting background, athletics, so she was very understanding. I would have done probably half of what I'd done.
She knew. You had to put in to get out of it.
Yeah, 100%. There's the food stuff, and you can. Alcohol, nutrition, all that sort of stuff. But I think I did that early on, and I was abstained from it all. But I realised that I needed to find balance as I got on. I think, if I could have the balance to take it or leave it, it was actually better for my decision making on the pitch.
Yeah. So what was the hardest thing as a professional sportsman for you?
Me.
Yeah. What was hard? Like
losing.
Yeah. Obviously.
Well, stupid question, isn't it?
Well, no. Okay. I'll rephrase that. Being a professional sportsman, maybe not the games, travelling's a lot, you're away for long times, away from family. So what did you find hardest thing? Or did you have a mental toughness to go, right, this is rugby time, this is family time? Could you kind of...
I think you said it. I think it's relatively easy to be selfish, which sounds really bad when you're in the environment or in camp. I think the only negative of being in Cardiff and living in Swansea is that you're close enough to go back. So that was the difficult thing. But again, I had an understanding wife, and Anne was great with that. But if I needed to stay up there for an extra day or extra hour or two, that could be the difference on a Saturday. And sometimes it was easy actually to be abroad because you couldn't get back. So, that's the thing. I don't necessarily, because I did enjoy it, and I think actually Steve Tandy said this to me when he was coaching the region. I was very fortunate because I hadn't realised it until he said that, because I lived what I did all of those decisions about what you have to do were taken away. So I just got on.
Yeah,
with
there's your career.
what it was.
There's your career. This is when it's going to end.
Yeah.
You've got to make the most of it.
Well, I was told it was going to end a few times before.
Yeah, well, that's where your recovery came into it, right? So, talking about, like, you know, recovery, what you enjoying life after rugby?
Yeah, to flip the next some recovery after 20 years. That sounds dodgy, doesn't it?
I know.
Yeah, I think it's been more difficult than I thought, if I'm honest.
Is it because you got to think, right? You had a structured life for 20 years, maybe more than that, was it? Because you know, coming through the ranks, and now it's like, oh, hang on.
Well, yeah, other than injury, and you're still in, and probably in a bit more than you would be if you're playing on a weekend. You probably have 4 or 5 weeks off. Other than a couple of years where I had extended, or maybe 2 or 3 years extended summer off. Yeah, that's what about. In a way, it was easier then because your deadline's every Saturday. Whereas you come out of the game and, you know, I'm not great. I do my best on emails, but people don't reply to emails and, you know, all those sorts of things. So getting to...
You have to get used to that, mate. Because if you're in a sport environment, right, everything is good comms, everyone gets back to you. You know, you got a goal which is on a Saturday, which you need to get a result from, right? And that's the way it is, right? But life, a lot of people's life isn't like that. So, you know, I'll get back to people straight away, and it's weird how you adjust to it. Do you miss the structure, or are you happy to not have the structure?
No, I think structure is the best way to put it. I think, but I think there's accountability within that as well, because again, you find out when you know, because people ask questions or you ask questions, and you know you need to know because you're going again on Saturday and all those sorts of things. And it's a lot goes into it, but it's a relatively simple existence. Yeah. Whereas you come outside and you see a lot less faces every day, and you know you've got different goals. But I think the most important team now is the one that's in the house.
That's the thing. Do you get?
Still not the most famous person in the house, but you know.
No. Do you get?
I'm not the best athlete.
No, I know that. Yeah. Do you get stuck in? I know this. Do you get stuck into the? Do you get stuck into the family chores? Because I know, right? I see Anne, when your wife, in Marks and Spencer's quite a lot, and I'm there with my wife, and she goes, oh, he's in the house again.
Well, yeah. Well, the thing is, it's dangerous. I never shop hungry. Thing. Yeah. Never shop hungry. So I eat that thing.
That's not an excuse.
That is an excuse.
You have to start.
That's not an excuse. That's fact.
But do you enjoy now the time with the girls?
Yeah, I do. I think obviously the eldest two will remember me playing. The youngest won't. But yeah, I was fortunate that a lot you got to be at a couple of my last games. But it's great to have the time to. And this is the thing. Everybody talks about being present or whatever. And I'm like, I was, but I wasn't for a long time.
Be where you're at.
Yeah.
Someone told me that.
Where's that?
Wherever you are.
Wow. So yeah, I thought all that sort of stuff. But the kids are getting older. I got a 10-year-old, which is mad. I don't feel old enough to have a 10-year-old. Anyway, so yeah, it's great, and feeling more connected at home is more evident that I wasn't necessarily as much when I was playing. But you don't realise it when you're in it.
No, you don't. And you got to appreciate that, you're not going to get those highs anymore. The banter and, the emotion, there's raw emotion of training and playing with your best mates in the change room.
But this is, it sounds a bit like trying to be tough or whatever. It's not, but even pain's a feedback. Do you know what I mean? You know how hard you played or how hard you had, how hard you trained. And I try and train a bit now, but I don't necessarily get as much feedback.
Well, that'll go away, let me tell you. Not pain, you don't want to be doing all that.
No, but you know what I mean. It's not saying
it is, but you're still trained.
Yeah,
and you just and you think back, you go, God, I'll remember how fit I was, right? You think, was I?
I think
crazy.
Somebody said, "Oh, you can't, or you don't anymore." I was like, "Well, if I wanted to, I could find the time." I'm just, I've trained for more health now than necessarily.
That's what you're on,
which is as important, if anything.
It is important, more important. Right, life after rugby. What are you going to do? You're doing. What are you doing now?
What do
you do?
Well, I do a bit with Swansea University, so helping develop National Institute of Sport and Health, which is a new entity probably leaning towards sport tech development and hopefully have impact in Swansea and wider society.
Yeah.
It's an interesting,
Very interesting
different
idea.
stuff. So enjoying doing that. Become an honorary colonel with the 3rd Battalion Royal Welsh.
I haven't seen you
Reserves.
in the outfit yet.
Yeah,
Come over and you can put it on.
take your time now. So yeah, I was a little bit, I'll be honest, apprehensive, because I think if it was regulars, I probably would have felt I haven't earned it. But
It's an honour.
it is. But
Yeah.
I think seeing what the reserves do and the fact that they're all around us is a bit mind blowing how they do.
Because you're humble, right? People are going to kind of give you these honours now, and they're giving it to you because when you are humble, decent, and what you've achieved.
Well,
So sometimes you've got to go,
Right.
put
Yeah,
that
but no,
aside.
it's just great to see, sort of the different side of things of, they represent Wales in a different way, and
Yeah.
I suppose I do it in a different
Yeah.
way now. Yeah.
And what you got to mention, because believe it or not, last night we were both dressed as elves.
Stop.
Things
Too much away now.
you do for your mates, let me tell you, right?
Wow.
So what brand was that? Go on, and what are you doing?
Well, I started a rum company in 2023, so just before I retired. We called it Mimosa Rum, because Mimosa was the name of the ship that took the first Welsh settlers to Patagonia.
Which was your first cap?
1865. Yeah, well, my first cap was in 1865. Although
No, I know. I said I was there in 1888. 1988. 1988 in Patagonia. We were there.
But so we launched in 2023, 158 years after they set sail, which was a bit weird because I finished on 158 test caps. So we're in Tesco's, Morrison's, on Amazon, speaking to another couple of supermarkets. It's tough. Hopefully we'll keep going. I'd like to think we have. We've had huge support locally, and some like Castle Howell, Brian, supports, loads of rugby players through the years and had opportunities. So hopefully we keep going, and watch this space.
Well, good luck with that.
Well,
But also, questions I have always been asked. I've been retired a long, long time. Would you ever go into coaching?
Do you know, I always said never when I played. I think never say never.
I was the same as you, exactly the same.
But I don't know. I think that's an interesting one, isn't it?
You never know what's going to...
Well,
opportunity comes up.
Well, I think what we've learned, or I've learned, you could have more of an influence on the game now in a suit rather than a tracksuit.
Yeah.
That's not to be, barbed at anyone involved in the game of Wales at the minute, but I think the game globally has got a lot of challenges.
Yeah.
Whether I'm the right fit or whether I've got the experience or understanding to put my shoulder on the wheel is another thing. But I think that's what I've learned, particularly towards the end of my career and the last few years.
You never know.
Never.
That's what I said. Right, darling, I have got 10 quick-fire questions, quick-fire answers, okay?
Okay.
For the Jonathan X programme, so here we go. What advice you would give to youngsters playing now?
Make more mistakes.
That's because you've got to learn your failings. That's what I'm saying. Best perk you've had as being a Welsh or Lions captain?
That's perk.
Perk. I've seen you, Jim. Yeah, it's definitely stash.
Well, that's Jim Kit, right?
Yeah, I think either
and
way.
it's not just because it's kit. I think there's something about pulling something, some of the back.
At least you're not wearing them still, like some of the old players are. Full kick wankers.
No.
There we are. What song is most likely to get you on the dance floor?
On the dance floor?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Probably Tump Bath, man. A Tump Bath. Not at the wedding, say. I'd love a good Tump Bath.
I'll tell you, I can see you go as well. Doing the splits and all that.
Oh no.
Why not? What's the biggest ick? Things that annoy you? Biggest thing that annoys you?
Being late, probably.
Yeah.
And do you know what? I've been bad at that lately. So it's myself as well.
It's not a great trait, that is.
No.
What would be your favourite second partner, dead or alive?
Well, do you know what I looked up to? It was probably Martin Johnson coming through. It was between him and John Eales, just because, at the time, again, being young, they were the two that had won the World Cups. Yeah. Closest men to me.
I played with John. I played with Martin Johnson in the Barbers game. It was a great experience. What would you be doing if you didn't make it as a rugby player?
Probably would be using that expensive piece of paper I got.
Yeah, the lawyer.
Doing something else.
Okay. Hardest players you faced? Tough list.
Probably Backy's back. He's a great guy. You know, I think he was last of the last sort of player in that ilk before the, you know, I just, you know, I think not just how ferocious he was, he could still play and, you know, move.
He got some second rows in South Africa, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Right, we're going to play, bench or drop, okay?
Oh, I don't do.
Sarah, Jiffy or Nigel? Who do you play? Who do you bench and who do you drop?
Okay. Dropping Nigel, full of pens back in the day. Gonna start Sarah.
Play Sarah?
Yeah. I'll bring you on from the park, man. The game's changed now, so I'm going to be a one-man bomb squad.
Okay, you're lucky at that one. Alan, absolute pleasure.
Talk about it.
Bye-bye.